What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Ecommerce Growth Map Podcast with your host, Frank Kenny, head of growth and CEO at Lion Media. And in today's episode of the podcast, I'm going to show you guys how our exercise for how we project into the next month. When I'm talking about projection, I'm talking about like spend projection, ROAS projection for our various accounts, right? And typically, I'm going to go into one specific account. I'm going to show you a growth map, which is essentially a tool that we built to essentially build our projection for our specific clients, right? And essentially what I'm going to do over here is share my screen so you guys can also see this if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're watching this on like Spotify or Apple Podcast, then, it's not going to be as visual for you, but, you can still kind of get the gist from what I'm going to be explaining, right? So forecasting I think it's a very important exercise for all brand, right? Because you want to essentially kind of forecast, have your projection for what you think is going to happen into the future, right? And then you need to have some form of mechanism, and what we use as a growth map, a mechanism in which it tracks your projection against what the actual is, right? And again, this is very important because as you're building your strategy on like your various media accounts, Meta, Google, TikTok, or whatever platform you're advertising on, you want to make sure that, again, you're keeping track of how the platform is actually performing based upon what you projected. And so if there's any anomalies, right, or if you're off your forecast, off your projection, then you can adjust, right? Whether it's like testing your creative, whether that's like just testing a new offer, or whatever strategy that you need to adjust. It's just very important that you have something to keep track of that. And so what we have here is a growth map, right? And we're going to start a projection with Meta, right? And then with Google as well. So in this specific account, we have $60,000 in December to work with, right? So essentially, we're going to project out we're going to project how much we're going to spend, in each specific platform, on Google, on Meta, right? We're going to determine how each platform gets more of the spend and why some platforms don't get as much spend, right? How we start our projection, first and foremost, what we do is we're going to look at a calendar, right? A calendar determines what and how much spend goes on each specific day, right? Let me say that again because this is very important. The calendar, right, determined what goes on or how much spend gets allocated on each specific days of the month, right? So we're going into December. So obviously we have Cyber Monday, which is happening on Monday, right? After the Cyber Monday, then we have holiday sales going on, right? So this is gonna incorporate like gifting, things for her, things for him, type of messaging, right? And so we have different sales running for those, right? And we're going to distribute more dollars in those specific days where we have sale event, right? So we're going to go here. When you look at the November plan, so in November, obviously we had the early Black Friday sales, and then we also had a Black Friday sale event, right? And so just kind of looking at the agenda for December. So we're going to go over here and add, because Monday is when we have Cyber Monday. So we're going to do Cyber Monday here. And so it's going to be 40% off, right? It's 40% off, and that's going to run for an entire until, let's see, I believe it's up until the 8th, right? So that's how long we're going to run the Cyber Monday sale, right? If we see that it starts performing earlier, obviously like we can cut off the sale, but that's what's on the agenda so far, right? And preceding that, we're also going to have essentially a 25% off. 25% off. This is going to be for like a holiday sale, right? So that's going to start on the 9th, and then that's going to go out all the way until the end of the month. So basically this whole month we're going to be running sales, right? Let's see, we're going to have the cutoff actually on the 25th. Right, so we're going to have the cutoff on the 25th. So that's the sale period, right? So essentially it looks like we're running sale throughout this whole entire month, right? And so let's look at the previous month. So this is December that we're projecting out into, right? So when we look at the calendar event for November, we can see that we weren't really promoting anything. We didn't really have any sales in the first month of November or the first week of November. So from the 1st to like the 12th, you see that we didn't have any sales when you look at the calendar event. Right, the actual sale actually started on the 13th, as you can see over here on the screen, right? And then we ran the sale all the way again until the 25th, and then from the 26th to the 30th, we have the Black Friday sale, which that just ended. Today we're recording this video, which is Saturday, so that just ended yesterday actually, right? So typically when we when we go out to the projection, first I'm going to go out and see, okay, so we were able to spend, let's see, $30,000 on Meta, right? We were able to spend $30,000 on Meta at a 4.47 return on ad spend, according to this. According to this, right? And we had a 5.72 projected at a $25,000 spend. So look, obviously we went above what we actually projected. And the reason being because when we looked at the actual sales data, when we look at the ROAS, and then when we look at the spend, we told our clients, hey, I think we can actually get more spend at a relatively high efficiency, right? So when you look at the break even for this account, it's like a 3x, right? And so when we're looking at this, we're like a 400 plus return on ad spend. And we told the client, hey, I think we can definitely push more spend here to get more advantage. And so that's why we ended up with the actual spend of $30,000, right? At a 4.47 return on ad spend. So I'm going to look at this, right? And I'm going to go, so kind of how this works. So we have campaign buckets, right? So these are all the campaigns that we have on Meta, right? So we have multiple campaigns running. And the campaigns that actually have data, those are the campaigns that are active and those are on right now. So we can see, so we'll start with this over here. We can see we have a DPA campaign, which is a dynamic product ads, right? So this is a retargeting campaign. And you can see actually what we had projected over here. We had a $3,300 projected, and what the actual was $2,600 spend. And the projected ROAS was a 6.71, but the actual ROAS was 7.18. So actually better than what we had projected, right? So this was very good for us, right? Obviously, we didn't hit the spend projection, but again, we came relatively close to it, right? So around like $600 or $700 like shy of that projection, right? So I'm gonna look at that. So I'm gonna look, first of all, I'm gonna look at the spend. I'm gonna look at the average between, I'm gonna look at the average of the actual spend. So I go over here, I look at the average, it's like $90 a day, right? So $90 the average. So I'm gonna take that $90. I'm gonna start my projections with that, okay? So minus Cyber Monday. So I'm gonna start with a $90 to $90, and then I'm just gonna spread that out through the entire month, right? So this is how our forecasting exercise our projection exercise go. Okay, so, okay, cool. I know that I'm gonna need to make some adjustments because obviously we're running sale during like the first couple of weeks of this month. So basically we're running sales throughout the whole month actually. So when I look at the calendar event, we have the Cyber Monday sale happening from the 1st to all the way to the 8th. So I can come in here and see, okay, so it looks like on Black Friday, we actually pushed through $268 in spend. What we actually had projected was $400. So I'm gonna come over here and maybe I'm gonna reduce this to like a $300, just specific for this campaign, and I'm gonna push this out all the way onto the 3rd, right? Boom, and then I'll leave that as it is for now, so we can see what the projected is already. It's at $4,400 or $4,470 for this specific campaign, right? If we keep this like this. And I'm gonna do the same thing for the projected ROAS. So I'm gonna come over here, I'm gonna look at my actual ROAS, right? And then I'm gonna look at what the average for that is. So the average for that is it looks like it's a 7x average. So what I'm gonna do is come over here to the projected, and I'm gonna start that with a 7x, right? And so I'm gonna project that all the way throughout the rest of the month, boom. And I'm gonna leave that for now, right? If you look at how we perform on Black Friday on the actual sale event day itself, so we actually had 11x. When you look at the actual ROAS on that, we had 11x on that specific day right here. And so I can come back over here and look and say, okay, cool. I think we can get between 11 and the 12x on this specific sale event. So I'm gonna come back over here and then I'm gonna adjust this to we're gonna do a 12, right? We're gonna do a 12 on that specific day. And then obviously Cyber Monday itself is going to be the biggest sale day. And then you're going to see sale is going to start to decrease. When sales start to decrease, like the efficiency also starts to decrease as well. So I'm going to say that we'll probably get us 8. Maybe we'll go from a 12 to like a 9. And then we'll do another 9 the next day. And then I think we're going to do an 8. And then I'm going to drag this down again, boom. And then I think that from the 5th all the way to the 8th, I think it's going to be like a 7x. So I'm going to keep that as it is. So when you look at the projected ROAS, it's going to be a 7.75 return on ad spend. It's actually what I'm projecting based upon this, if I don't change anything else, right? And so what you'll see as like the day actually hits, so we're going to see if I'm going to be like, we're going to see how close I am to my projected spend on that specific day relative to the actual, right? We're going to see that. Like, obviously the data hasn't pulled yet because we haven't hit that day yet. But when you look at the other days, so this is November over here. So you can see that on Black Friday itself, we again projected $400, but we actually hit $268. So we were actually off. And then we had a projected of 8x% return on ad spend, where we actually hit 11x, right? So the data will flow in, and then we can see that when you go to the next day, which is actually Saturday, so the whole day is not over yet, but we can see that we have a 10x return on ad spend so far, right? It's not going to be a drastic drop, but it is going to be a slight drop. So that's kind of what essentially basing my projection off based upon the previous month, and obviously also looking at the calendar event, what's happening on the calendar, right? Cool. So we're going to essentially carry this whole exercise throughout every single campaign that we have, right? So you can see that these campaigns are off. This campaign is off. This campaign is off. Actually, no, this is not off. Actually, this is active. So this is that campaign. So I'm going to do a similar thing over here. So we had a $3,900 projected, and what the actual was $4,255. Projected 6x, and then the actual ROAS was a 5x. So carry the same exercise. I'm going to come over here to the top, drag this down to the bottom. I'm going to see what my average spend was on that specific day, and I'm going to start with that. Right, and I'm going to start with that. So we're going to do, what was it, 141, I believe it was. So, boom, 146 actually. So 146, projected 146. So that's what we're going to start with. Now, just drag this down all the way up until the 31st of December. Boom. Now, the next thing that we do, let's look at the calendar events. Look at the calendar event. Let's see. Okay, cool. It looks like we have Cyber Monday happening over here. So from the 1st again, all the way until the 8th, that's when the sale is running. So I actually want to have more dollars allocated during the specific days that we have the sale, right? So I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to see, okay, cool. It looks like on Black Friday itself, we push $196 based upon like the $550 projected, right? So we weren't able to spend as much. And when we look at the ROAS efficiency, so the highest ROAS was on the actual Black Friday, which was a 7x return on ad spend. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to say that I think we can do around $350 a day. So I'm going to drag this down. Actually, we're going to start this on the top. And then I'm going to drag this down up until the 8th. Boom. Right. And so you can see my projected spend now is $6,158. Right. So I'm going to leave it as that for now. And then you can see that the ROAS was a 7.93. So I'm going to say, okay, my projection is that we're going to hit an 8x return on ad spend. And then I'm also going to drag this down across up until the 8th. Boom. And so the rest, I think that we are going to do, so let's look at what the average of that is. We can see that we have the average is a 6. So I'm going to say that the rest of the days we're going to do a 6x return on ad spend with this $146 in spend if we're to keep this plan as it is, right? So those would be my projection. Now, I go through multiple phases or multiple steps of just going back and refining this, but this is how I start, right? So you can see so far we have a projected of $4,470. $4,470 here, and then over here we have $6,158. So let me look at my total. So my total so far projected is $11,128 projected so far across all the meta campaigns. There's more campaigns that we have that are active that we want to continue out throughout the month of December, right? So let's go back to November. So we see that we had this remarketing campaign active. So we can see we had $3,400 in spend projected, and the actual was $2,300. So I'm going to look at the average of this. Boom. Same exercise, $80. Start with my $80 over here. Boom. And then I'm going to drag this down. And then we already have in mind that we are running a sale from the 1st all the way up to the 8th. So I'm going to see what did we do on Black Friday. So we had a $425 projected. And we had $500 projected, and we actually did $425. Not too far off the actual projection. And then the efficiency, we had a 7x efficiency, but we actually came at a 3.26 efficiency, right? So much lower than actually what we had projected, right? Nonetheless, I'm going to look at the spend. I'm going to say, okay, cool. I think we can actually hit $500. $500. So we're going to push $500 on Cyber Monday. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this out up until the 8th, right? And what I'm actually going to do for this specific one, I'm going to start decreasing spend on Wednesday. So 2 days after Cyber Monday, I'm going to decrease spend to like $400. And I'm going to do this across the board actually, because I don't think that we're going to be able to hit a $500 spend on this specific campaign. And so as well, when looking at the efficiency is not where we want it to be, right? So when you look at the average of what the ROAS is, so we see that we have a 6.8 average. So I'm gonna go with a 6 here, boom, and then I'm gonna drag this down across every day throughout the month, boom, all the way to the 31st, and then we see that okay, cool. Black Friday itself, because we pushed $425, we didn't hit our efficiency target. When we look at the previous days, when we were hitting around like $29, $50, $70 here and then, we see that the efficiency was quite high over here. On some days we hit a 4x, some days we hit a 15, some days we hit a 8x return on ad spend. So essentially what it's telling you is like the lower the spend, the more the efficiency, the more you spend, the lower the efficiency, right? And so that's kind of like the baseline across like all marketing platforms. So looking at this over here, I don't think that we're going to be able to hit a 6x over here. So I'm actually going to drop this down to a 4 on Cyber Monday, and then I'm going to drag this down to those 2 days. And then because we are lowering the spend, the spend over here, so I'm going to do a 5x over here, and then I'm also going to drag this down across the other days, and then I'm going to maintain that. So right now, if we keep everything as it is, we are projected to spend $5,240 and a 5x return on ad spend projected, right? So that's what we have so far. And so when we look at the total spend so far, we have $15,868 in overall projected at a 7x return on ad spend. That's actually pretty high. So we're going to need to make some adjustment. But let's keep going through this exercise. So we just did the retargeting campaign. And then the next one that we're going to do is, so I always look at November, see where we actually had spend, what campaigns we had active and how we spend on it. So we look at this ROAS goal campaign mix collection. So we had a 7,800 projected here. Actual $8,670. Actual ROAS was a 4.51 against our 5.55 projected, right? So same thing over here. Let's look at the average between that, the average spend. So the average spend was $298. So let's start with that actually. So $298, boom. And then I'm going to drag this down throughout the whole entire month. And then I'm going to go back. Okay, we know that we have Cyber Monday from the 1st to the 8th. So actually what I'm going to do is look at how much we did on Black Friday, which was only $394 at a 3.25 return on ad spend. Interesting. So we hit our projected, we're off our projected spend and our projected efficiency, right? So we weren't able to push as much spend. So what I'll do is actually say, I think we can push $500 here, right? I think we can push $500 there, drag this out throughout the first 2 days, and then I'm going to decrease that. I'm going to decrease that over here, and then I'm going to do the same thing up until the 8th, right? And then from the ROAS perspective, we hit basically $400 at a 3.45. So we're going to need to change some things, but I think that we can hit a 4x on that day with a $500 spend. And then so I'm going to push that over there. And when we look at the average of the ROAS for those days, we can see we have a 4. The 4 is an average. So right now we're basically hitting the average over here. So I'm going to go over here. I think that with this spend, we can do like a 3.5. Yeah, 3.5 on those specific days. And then I'm going to drag this down up until here. Boom. And then over here, I think that we can do, because the spend is going to be lower over here. So I think that we can actually do a 4x on that. And I'm going to make a few adjustments actually. I'm going to project that we can do at least a 5 on this one. 5x on the specific days. And then on these days, we can do actually a 4. 4 on these days. So, and then we'll keep that across the board for now. But first two days of Cyber Monday, I think we can do a 5x. Right, so we can looking at this one, we have a $10,000. So that's actually pretty high with a 4x return on ad spend. So I'll go back and again, I'll need to make some adjustment, but like that's my baseline on which I'm going to start with. Okay, what else? We have the Black Friday campaign over here. So this is the Black Friday campaign. So we had $4,400 projected on this one, but what we actually hit in November was 1,723. I think this is a little bit off. I think we actually did hit more than that. Yeah, but nonetheless, when we look at the average of this, so we have an average of like $132. So that's for the spend. So I'm gonna start my spend at $132. And then I'm going to drag this down all the way up until the 31st. Boom. Next thing's next. We know that on Black Friday. Yeah, so it looks like it has not pulled the data for Black Friday. So I need to go back and refresh this and see what the actual data is. But let me look into the Meta account and see what we actually did on Black Friday itself. So what I'm going to do is go back to the Meta account and pull the actual data for so that was the 28th. So how much we spent? 22,000. So on the Meta campaign, on the Black Friday campaign, we actually got through $1,646. Got to see what the efficiency on that is as well. So $1,643 at let's see what the ROAS on that. I think it was like a 3 point something, or actually no, I think it was like a 4x on that. So let's look at that. Nope, it actually was a 2.82. So yesterday, so we got through $1,600 at a 2.82 return on ad spend. So going back to my growth map over here, I see, so we got through, so we definitely went above what the actual projector is, which was $1,000 on that. And we had a 6x% return on ad spend, what we have projected. But the actual was like a 2.9 something, I believe it was. All right, so essentially what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put in $800. Actually, no, I'm going to put at $1,000, what it previously had there. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to put $500 for the preceding day. And then I'm going to drag that down. And then I'm going to do $300. And then I'm going to drag that down for another 2 days. And then I'm going to keep the rest at, let's do $200 here. So I want to keep adjusting that up onto the 8th. So I'm going to do $200 from the 7th up until that's the 6th up until the 8th. Boom, right there. And so my projected ROAS, I don't think it's going to be as high because when you look at the actual Black Friday ROAS, it wasn't what we projected. It was actually like below that. So first what I'm going to do is for the first 2 days, we're going to do a 4 right there. We're going to do a 4 right here. And then I'm going to do a 5 here. Actually, here, we'll do a 4 there. We're going to do another 4 here. Drag this down up here. And then here, let's do this. Let's do 5 here. Let's do 5 here. Another 5 here. Yeah, because those days, I think, we just need to do something a little different because it looks like we didn't hit, on Black Friday, we didn't hit what the projected ROAS was. But on Cyber Monday, I think that we could. I think we just need to change our creative strategy. But what I'm going to have projected is a 5x on those specific days, on the first and the second, and then a 4x throughout the remaining days of the month, right? So when you look at the projected spend for this whole entire month, is for this specific campaign alone, it's going to be $6,236, right? Now, I don't want to change this campaign because some people, they're gonna build a new campaign, right? I'm not gonna build a new campaign because this campaign already has data. So we're treating this campaign as like a holiday and Black Friday, Cyber Monday campaign. So the next thing after Black Friday, we're gonna change the creative in this specific campaign, or we're just gonna have in a new ad set, it's gonna have all the creative for the holiday. So we're gonna use the same campaign throughout the whole month, right? As opposed to building a new one. So projected $6,236. So let's see, did we have any additional campaigns? Nope, it looks like that's it. So now let's look at what the projected spend is on ROAS. So what the total is. So you see we have a total of $15,868 at a 6x return on ad spend. So it looks like I can actually push more spend on Meta, right? Because we have a $60,000 budget to kind of get through, right? And then we're right now I want to spend around like similar to what we did in November here. So I'm going to go back and adjust spend. So let's go back. So over here, I'm going to go to the actual, where are we at? I'm going to go back to the actual Black Friday campaign. I'm going to push more spend in here, right? From the 9th all the way until the 25th, we actually have a 25% off. So it's telling me that I can actually push more spend during the specific days because of that sale, right? So what I'm going to do is go back and start adjusting my campaigns again, right? Because I know I have more dollars to keep pushing. So on my remarketing campaign, I actually want to push more over here. So I'm going to go $200. Going to drag that down all the way up until the 25th. Drag that down all the way to the 25th. Where does that put me at from a total spend perspective? $17,000. Okay, cool. So I'm going to do the same thing for my Dabba campaign. So from here, I'm going to push another $220. Boom. Up until the 25th. Right there. And then I'm also going to go and adjust my retargeting campaign. I'm going to push another $200 here. Boom. All the way up to the 25th. 25th. And then I'm going to go to my ROAS gold campaign. I'm going to push more spend here. So we're going to do like $320 here. Drag that down up onto the 25th. Right there. And then I'm going to go to my Black Friday campaign and I'm going to push actually here. I'm going to adjust this over here. So I think we can do 300 here and drag that down up until the 8th. And then we're going to do $220 here. Boom. And so let me go back and check what my total spend is. So right now we have $21,000 projected so far. So it looks like I can push another $4,000 in here. So where's my $4,000 going to go? All right. So essentially what I want to do is actually push more on Cyber Monday. So I'm going to go back to the campaigns and push more on Cyber Monday. So if I'm pushing more, so we're going to go to the Dabba campaign over here, or the DPA campaign. I think I'm going to push $500 here. Actually, let's see. Let's do $800. We want to be aggressive on remarketing. And then $500 here. And then we can keep this at, let's see, $400. $400. I'm going to keep that up onto the 8th. Same thing here. I'm going to be a little more aggressive here. I'm going to do $500 on Dabba. And then $400 here. And then I'm going to drag this down up until the 8th. And then going back to retargeting, I'm going to do 600. Okay, let me make sure that I'm still within, okay, 22,000, basically 23,000. So we have another $2,100 to spend. So what I'm going to do is, I think this is fine here. I'm going to actually push more spend on Black Friday here. Cyber Monday here. So I want to do $2,000 here actually. Boom. So that means I have another $1,000 to go. So I'm going to do $800. Okay, and then I'm going to do 500. I think that's fine. Let's see how much. We want to hit at least $25,000. So 22,900. Okay. So let's see. Black Friday. I see. So what I'm gonna do is, I kind of see what happened here. So you see that this campaign name changed. So I need to actually go here, copy this name, because that's how our growth map pulls the data. Because you can see over here, it has early Black Friday. And so if I need to go back here and actually change this, actually. See, watch how the data is going to be updated now. So if you see over here, we're not pulling data from the 25th all the way up until the the 28th, right? So as I update this, it's going to start pulling the data. Watch that. Boom. Give it a second. Boom. Now we can see that it pulled the data, right? Because essentially what it does is like each campaign that we have on Meta, we'll just copy the campaign name and then just paste it here, and then it's going to pull all the data from that campaign name. So that's essentially how that works. So now we can see the actual data to kind of adjust up our projection. So you can see that, as we were talking about before, we projected $1,000. This is November for Black Friday, and we actually spent $1,600 at a 2.82 return on ad spend, right? So going back over here, let me go back. Let's see. Let me look at my total spend. Okay, 22,936. So I think I still need to push more spend here. So let's see if we can let's do $500 here. Let's see how that adjusts our overall total. Yeah, so for some reason it's not updating the total, but we're gonna stay with the $22,996 for now, right? So essentially, we take this exercise and carry out a similar process all on the Google account. So just kind of reframe and explain essentially what the process is. So right now, we essentially projected out $22,936 on Meta in December, right? And to essentially come up with this projection, we looked at the averages of what we did last month. Right, we went back and then we took the averages of the actual data. So, for example, for DPA, we took the average of what the actual spend is to come up with what we should start our projection with. So it was $90. That's actually what we started projected with at $90. And then preceding that, we went back and looked at the calendar. We see, okay, we have Cyber Monday from December 1st all the way up until the 8th. And then preceding that, we look at, okay, cool. How do we do on Black Friday? So we actually did $263 relative to the $400 projected that we had. So it looks like we came under a little bit, right? So we use all of that information to actually put our projections, right? And so we do the same thing. We carry the same exercise throughout every other campaign, right? So again, we look at what we did the month before, right? And then we look at what's on the calendar for this month. And then we adjust the projection based upon that. We do the same thing for the projected ROAS. Okay, we look at what was the average of the ROAS for the month before, and then what is on the calendar event, and then we come up with the projected ROAS for that campaign, and then we carry this across all the other campaigns, right? And then later we just have to see what it adds up to, right? As I mentioned, I originally wanted to project for $25,000 on Meta. So right now we have $22,936 at a 6.13. X return on ad spend. So essentially, I need to go back and readjust this plan a little bit more. But essentially, once you come up with your projection, then you can come in, then you can take another pass and see if there's anything else that's going to change on the calendar, right? And just kind of continue to adjust this and clean this up as much as possible. And then the goal is, as you go through the month, the data starts to pull in. You want to be as close to your projection as possible. So we always aim for like a 10% within. We aim for a 10% within what the projected is. So we want to be within the 10% mark of what we have projected, if that makes sense, guys. So essentially, this is how we do projection across all our accounts, right? So in this specific case, we just did Meta, but we'll go back on Google and apply the same thing as well over here, right? On Google, we're gonna project even a little bit more because Google for this account is typically more efficient. So we're gonna project a little bit more spend on that. So we'll probably do like $30,000 on Google and maybe like another $5,000 on another platform, which is probably gonna be like AdWords, specifically for remarketing, right? And guys, and so that's the exercise that we carry when we're doing projection for our client. And so we want to do this prior to the start of the month. So when the month starts, as the data starts to come in, we can see how close or how far we are to our projection. And if we're drastically off, then typically what we tend to do is go back and adjust our projection based upon what the actual data is being pulled in. For example, if we go in and we have a projected, let's see, if we have a projected ROAS of $1,900 on December 1st, and we probably come up at, let's say, like $1,000, right? So what we'll actually have to go back and do and start reducing are projected for the next preceding day, because it looks like for some reason we didn't hit what that is. Now, if we say we came up at like $3,000 projected on that day, what we'll actually do is like go back and readjust the rest of the projection for the rest of the day, right? So it's an exercise that we kind of make adjustment as the month carries through, right? If we need to sometimes change the strategy, test new creative to make sure that we hit our ROAS goals, then we'll do that, because it's specifically on Meta, the creative is a lot what is going to determine what the outcome or what the ROAS or the efficiency you're going to get. So creative is a big thing that we test when we're off our projected ROAS target. Guys, thanks for watching this episode of the podcast. If you guys have any question, if you're watching this on YouTube, drop them down in the comments. And if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anything like that, you can go to info@linemediallc.com. And you can email us at info@llc.com, or you can visit us at linemediaad.com, and then just fill out a contact form, and then we'll reach out to you, and then we'll send you book a strategy call if you're interested in partnering and working with us, guys. Guys, that's it. I'll see you guys in the next podcast. Peace.